To help us understand all this, Steve Centani telling us today exactly what has happened on Capitol Hill with regard to this. Hi, Steve.
Well, hi, Martha. Republicans clearly up in arms, pointing to what they call this unconstitutional power grab, an alleged effort by the White House to politicize the census. Now, a group of House Republicans held a news conference on Capitol Hill today. They fear this could potentially skew the way congressional districts are drawn and the way federal money is handed out. Here's John Boehner.
This unprecedented move by the president, I think, would undermine the goal of having a fair and accurate census count. My goodness, this is the census. All we're trying to do here is to count the number of Americans that we have. And I think it would also open the door to massive amounts of possible waste and fraud.
Now, this all began when the president nominated Republican Senator Judd Gregg to head the Commerce Department. The Census Bureau is part of that department, and minority groups were worried that a senator who once advocated abolishing the agency would not be committed to an accurate count. That prompted the White House to issue a statement last week that the census director would work closely with the White House senior management. Now, of course, the senior manager of the White House, other than President Obama himself, is the highly partisan Chief of Staff, Rahm Emanuel. The White House says this is all much ado about nothing since no decision has been made yet. They also insist the president is committed to a complete and accurate census count. A White House statement goes on to say this White House has not proposed removing the census from the Department of Commerce, and the same congressional committees that had oversight during the previous administration will retain that authority. The census, of course, doesn't begin until next year. It is required by the Constitution every 10 years, Martha.
All right, Steve, thank you very much. Steve Centani reporting from Washington.
Meantime, Tennessee Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn is a Republican on the Energy and Commerce Committee. She's calling for an investigation of the White House plans for a census. Congresswoman, good to have you.
Good to be with you. Thank you.
The question I don't think people get here, there really are two ways to do this. You can either count each American, or you can have statisticians do some sampling and extrapolate how many people are in this country. So it's kind of a dangerous precedent to go with the science over cold, hard numbers, right?
You're correct, it is, and we are very concerned, as the reports have arisen, that it would be moved from the jurisdiction of the Department of Commerce and the Secretary, which would be Senator Gregg, and over to the White House. We know that the Census Bureau has worked for decades to remove the political influence from that agency, and everybody that works with the Census Bureau now has to go through an FBI background check, and they've worked diligently to make certain that we can trust the numbers that they deliver, and to look at having that go to the White House and be handled out of the political wing of the White House is something that is of concern, and that's why my Republican colleagues on the Energy and Commerce Committee joined me in a letter asking Chairman Waxman to have a hearing on this, and we would hope that he would. The Senate, Senator
Congresswoman, everybody agrees this is partisan. I mean, you go back to Rahm Emanuel's statement a couple of years ago, and he says if you think redistricting is on steroids, this time talking about 2010, and oh, by the way, Rahm Emanuel would be one of the ones who were kind of heading up this census.
Well, and everyone is very concerned about that, and I think that's why the Senate has gone ahead today. Senator Carper and Senator McCain have set the hearing for March 5th in the Senate, and we think that the House, that Chairman Waxman should also set a hearing so that we can begin this process to make certain that all of our local and state elected officials, as well as our members of Congress, as well as the American people, can trust the fact that the Senate is going to be a fair, honest, and impartial
And speaking
census.
of fair and honest and impartial, the question becomes, like Congressman Mike Pence brought up, he said, look, if you don't trust Judd Gregg to do the right thing here, take him out. Give it to somebody else. The Commerce Department has always run this, and now we've got six former heads of the census saying this should be in independent hands. Who can disagree, as the urgent bulletin goes off, and we'll read that to you in a minute, who can disagree with this thing being in independent hands?
Well, and that is where it should be, and that's what the Census Bureau has worked for decades to achieve. That is why it has been left with the Census Bureau under the jurisdiction of the Department of Commerce. And as you said earlier, this is something that in Article 1, Section 2 of the Constitution, we are directed to do every 10 years. Everyone knows when the census takes place, and they know that census workers work very carefully with all of our local and state elected officials to make certain they count everyone.
Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn, thank you. Good to see you.
Thanks, Trace.